Chapter 181, Jang Nung AK5. This isn't a suggestion, I'm telling you to do it this way. In an instant, everyone's expression hardened. Just a moment ago, the situation seemed to be progressing smoothly. However, everything changed in a split second. What the hell is this guy doing? What is he saying? Not only Jang Nung AK, the second disciple of the society leader, but also his loyal subordinates felt the same way. For a moment they thought they might have misheard him. But upon seeing the smile full of malice on Mok Jang-un's face, they realized their ears weren't mistaken. Though it lasted only a split second, they had never felt a silence this long before. If anyone else had said those words, someone would have drawn their sword or blade and sliced off their head right there and then. But coincidentally, the opponent was a master who had crossed the wall into the transformation realm. Realizing that, drip drip, some of them were so extremely tense that they broke out in a cold sweat. How should they take this situation? Or what should they say? Amidst the confusing situation, the one to break the silence was Geo Mo Pal, the fifth mountain of the Five Mountains Alliance. You bastard! His voice and eyes were filled with rage. While everyone was contemplating the situation itself, Geo Mo Pal, who felt anger only at the fact that his lord had been insulted, was able to show a more straightforward attitude compared to the others. Ah! At the sound of his resounding voice, everyone came to their senses in an instant. Paying no attention to them, Geo Mo Pal shouted, "Unless you're insane, how dare you threaten our lord like that?" His yell was so loud that it was deafening. Mok Jang-un smiled and said in a low voice, "I can see you're angry, but please lower your voice a bit. It's hurting my ears." "What? Lower my voice? You bastard. I'll warn you one last time for the young master's sake. Lower your voice. I'm going to key." Gasp. Suddenly, Geo Mo Pal couldn't continue speaking. This is. His cheeks even trembled. It was because of the killing intent he felt the moment his eyes met Mok Jang-un's. Though it lasted only an instant, the image of Mok Jang-un slicing his neck flashed through Geo Mo Pal's mind. Swish. Imagining this, he found it difficult to open his mouth. Seeing Geo Mo Pal like this, Ho Jong Hyok, the first mountain, clicked his tongue inwardly. He had heard from his father that once one reaches the transformation realm and becomes a true grandmaster, they can control their energy more precisely and pressure a specific opponent with killing intent. It seemed Mok Jang-un had pressured Geo Mo Pal with his killing intent. This has gotten tricky. No matter how much one has reached the transformation realm, he didn't expect him to act this way. Their own liege was the society leader of the Heaven and Earth Society and one of the six heavens, considered the pinnacle of the Central Plains martial world. There were few within the organization who could do such a brazen thing to such a man. Only those who had the status and qualifications were able to do so. However, Mok Jang-un was not one of them. Is he relying solely on his martial prowess to do this? If that's the case, it's a miscalculation. It wasn't because his own lord feared his martial prowess that he showed courtesy to the guy. His lord simply, "Mok Jang-un, you really take this young master lightly." At that moment Jang Nung-ae spoke. Seeing him like that, the expressions of his loyal subordinates grew serious. His icy cold gaze, his heavily subdued tone showed how furious their lord was at this moment. When Jang Nung-ae is truly angry, he doesn't flare up like a fire. Rather, he becomes even more cold-hearted. And that cold-heartedness brings deep insight. Take you lightly? I'm merely presenting a condition that can benefit both the young master and the young lady. Benefiting both of us? Cut the bullshit. Bullshit, you say? For two forces to merge into one, someone has to bow their head and enter below the other. But do you think that's possible with your pathetic threats? It's possible, that's why I'm telling you to do it that way. Telling me? You're being quite presumptuous. How unexpected. Interest flashed in Mok Jang-un's eyes. He had considered Jang Nung-ae's capacity to be quite shallow and small, but he was saying everything he wanted to say even in this situation. That meant he wasn't afraid of him, even though he should have already confirmed the gap in their power. Unexpected? That's what this young master wants to say. Are you not afraid? Not afraid, you say? Who do you think you're trying to threaten right now? You really don't feel like a threat to me. I told you to cut the nonsense. Have you completely lost your mind trying to interfere in the successor battle and arbitrarily shake things up? At these words, Mok Jang-un's eyes narrowed. You're being tougher than I expected. Tough? That's what this young master should be saying. Do you believe in your petty martial arts so much that you dare to interfere with the successor battle and arbitrarily stir things up? Why are you thinking so complexly about it? Mok Jaeongun asked in an intrigued tone. Then Jang Nungak opened his mouth while pouring wine into his cup. I can guess two possibilities. Two possibilities? The first would be based on the premise that you've joined hands with Wai So-yun. Why do you think that? It's simple. Even with the power of Shadow Clan and Baek Clan added to Junior Sister, it's still not enough for both of you to face off against the eldest senior brother and this young master. At Jang Nungak's words, Mok Jaeongun smiled faintly. He thought his vision would be quite clouded due to his arrogance, but that didn't seem to be entirely the case. Mok Jaeongun shrugged and said, "There's some truth to that. But from my perspective, for the two of you to face the eldest young master, I'd prefer if you and the young lady joined forces regardless of who comes out on top." Regardless of who comes out on top? Yes. I don't really care which of you two becomes the successor, you see. As long as you unite your forces, that's all that matters to me. At these words from Mok Jaeongun, Jang Nungak's eyes grew even more vicious. Then he soon parted his lips. I thought it was the first possibility, but it seems to be the second one. And what might that second one be? You don't care who becomes the successor? The answer is clear now. Your goal is to stir up internal strife, isn't it? Pai Lord. At Jang Nungak's words, his subordinates' eyes widened. Seeing their reaction, Jang Nungak glared at Mok Jaeongun and said, I nearly forgot because I was thinking about the Shadow Clan and the King of Poison. You were originally a hostage from the righteous faction. At this, everyone showed caution. The orthodox martial world was eagerly waiting for an opportunity to dismantle the Heaven and Earth Society. For them, there was nothing better than the successor battle to incite internal conflict. If Mok Jaeongun hadn't truly surrendered and still held a mission as a member of the righteous faction, there was a good possibility for this suspicion. Gulp. Jang Nungi downed his cup of alcohol and said, Tell me if my guess is wrong. At his words, Mok Jaeongun scratched his head and replied, Your mind is sharper than I expected. You're also. But you're mistaken. At that, Jang Nungak furrowed his brows. Then he retorted, Mistaken, you say? Yes. Things can seem that way if you overthink it. But I'm sorry to disappoint you, I truly have no connection to the righteous faction. You expect me to believe that now? Believe it or not, that's up to you. I simply wish for the two of you to join forces. That way we can avoid the annoying business with the eldest young master. At Mok Jaeongun's words, suspicion flashed in Jang Nungak's eyes. The guy was in an advantageous position, so he directly stated what he had guessed in order to gauge his true intentions. But he's really saying it's not like that? Well, who knows? An agent trying to disrupt the sect on behalf of the righteous faction wouldn't admit to being a spy, after all. As he was thinking that, Mok Jaeongun said, It seems persuasion through words is meaningless. Bam. As soon as he finished speaking, Jang Nungak's subordinates Ho Jong-hyuk, Seo Hyein, and Geo Mo Pal of the Five Mountains Alliance drew upon their energy and took defensive stances. Mok Jaeongun chuckled and said, You should know that you can't stop me even if you do that. Are you really trying to threaten this young master? Yes, I suppose it is a threat if you put it that way. Bam. You fucking bastard. Bam. Geo Mo Pal tried to stand up from his seat, but ended up slamming his head on the table. Mok Jaeongun had appeared behind him in the blink of an eye and was pressing down on his head. Seeing this happen in the flash of an eye, Ho Jong-hyuk judged that they absolutely could not stop Mok Jaeongun within this distance. Pai Lord. I know. Seeing them like that, Mok Jaeongun said, Will you accept it? At those words, Jang Nungak snorted and replied, Do you have the confidence to handle the consequences of doing this? That's not something you need to worry about. Right. I suppose so. But you'll have to deal with the consequences of that threat. Deal with the consequences? Do you think this young master would let you get close without any preparations, even if I acknowledge your martial prowess? At those words, Mok Jaeongun tilted his head and asked, It seems you have some hidden trump card? To that question, Jang Nungak smiled meaningfully and said, Do you really think there's absolutely no one among the forces supporting this young master who can deal with you? Someone who can deal with me? Don't tell me. Mok Jaeungun's expression hardened. It was because he understood what Jang Nung-ak was implying. Looking at Mok Jaeungun like this, the corners of Jang Nung-ak's mouth curved up wickedly. Just half a moment ago, Jang Nung-ak had given an order to the martial artists on the terrace. You all withdraw for now. But my lord. I told you to withdraw. Yes, sir. It looked like he simply made them withdraw. However, right now, gather all the martial artists in the estate, and summon Axe King Ho Taegang, Water Clan Master Go Yunbak, and Valley Master of Summoning Sound Valley Hang Yeoriang. There was a secret known only to Jang Nung-ak's close confidants and subordinates. It was the art of transmitting secret messages through sound, secret voice transmission. Jang Nung-ak, who had gained the support of the Summoning Sound Valley Master, learned secret voice transmission from her as a gift. And he found it useful from time to time. This was one such situation. Axe King Ho Taegang. He was one of the 5 kings and a member of the 8 stars, considered the top masters of the current martial world. He was one of the few transformation realm experts in the Heaven and Earth Society and Jang Nung-ak's greatest force that he had recruited first. Did you think this young master would fully trust you? The opponent was a transformation realm expert. Things went wrong, who knows what the outcome would be. Judging by this guy's actions, he didn't seem to fear the society leader, his master, like others did. In the first place, if he did, he wouldn't have done something like defeating Ko Yun-hoo, one of the 5 tigers, earlier. That's why Jang Nung-ak called upon the best card he had. The Supreme Master who had reached the transformation realm even longer ago than Mok Jaeungun. Half a moment. That's enough. This much time was sufficient to summon the Axe King. Axe King's estate was located closest among the other executives. He would probably arrive here soon. Someone who can deal with me? Don't tell me. To Mok Jaeungun, whose face had stiffened, Jang Nung-ak raised the corners of his mouth wickedly and said, "Did you think this young master would let you get close without careful thought? You'll have to take responsibility for the consequences you brought upon yourself. You're not an ordinary person indeed. By the time you regret it now, it's already. Would it make you feel better if I say that?" What? This bastard, does he not understand the situation right now? Puzzled by this, Mok Jaeungun smiled and said, "A suspicious person like you wouldn't casually dismiss the subordinates around you for a private conversation and have me sit close to you without hesitation. Did you think I would simply believe that? You bastard." "Of course." Tap tap. Mok Jaeungun tapped his head with his finger and continued, "Of course, I thought you would have prepared something. Am I right?" At Mok Jaeungun's words, Jang Nung-ak glared at him and replied in a low voice, "You're quite cunning indeed. But even if you realize it now, do you think it will change anything? Rather, even now. Did you learn sound transmission from the Summoning Sound Valley Master?" At that question, Jang Nung-ak, who was trying to maintain a composed appearance, raised one eyebrow. How the hell does this guy know that? Seeing his reaction, Mok Jaeungun chuckled and said, "Seems like I'm right. Well, since you promised to gain the support of the Summoning Sound Valley Master, I thought it was possible." "You bastard, how?" Just as Jang Nung-ak was about to say something, Jang Nung-ak, who sensed someone entering the garden, smiled with satisfaction. No matter how Mok Jaeungun knew about the sound transmission, once Axe King Ho Taegang arrived, the situation would be over. However, Jang Nung-ak's expression stiffened as he turned his gaze towards the garden entrance. Because the one who entered was not Axe King as he had expected. The one who entered the garden was none other than Jang Im. Jang Im, the subordinate of the deceased Wai Mengcheon, who was one of the martial artists sitting on the terrace. Seeing him enter suddenly, Jang Nung-ak was at a loss. That was because he had sent an urgent sound transmission to him with orders. Instead of the Axe King he had summoned, why was that bastard here? Blood. But something was strange. Jang Im's clothes were stained with blood. Why was that bastard in such a state? Did you take care of it well? At that moment, Mok Jaeungun's voice rang in his ears. Did you take care of it well? What the hell was this? Bam. Jang Im, the subordinate of the deceased Wai Mengcheon, knelt on one knee and clasped his hands together in a respectful salute toward Mok Jaeungun as he replied, "Master, I took care of everything as you ordered." As soon as he finished speaking, Jang Nung-ak's face twisted terribly. What the hell was going on? Why was that bastard calling Mok Jang-un master? As he was feeling perplexed, he suddenly sensed a strange presence behind him and someone placing a hand on his shoulder. Gasp. The startled Jang Nung-ae tried to shake it off, but... Grab. What? The pressing force was so strong that he couldn't even move his shoulder. Then a whisper came from behind him. What will you do now that news different from what you expected has arrived? It was Mok Jang-un's voice. When did this bastard get behind him? You bastard. Shoo. Be quiet and relax your shoulders. If you keep moving like that, I might feel like breaking them with the strength in my hands. Tedder. At those words and the accompanying laughter, goosebumps instantly covered Jang Nung-ae's entire body. Where did things go wrong? Chapter 182, Submission 1. My lord. I'm sorry. Wei Mengqion, who was possessing the body of his subordinate Zhang Im, apologized inwardly. He wanted to strike the back of that guy's head for the sake of his former lord, Jang Nung-ae, but after becoming a servant spirit and realizing the principle of karma, he couldn't do it. The fate of the servant spirit and its master were one and the same. But even if it weren't for that, the more he learned about Mok Jang-un, the more fearful he became. What the hell was that monstrous bird earlier? In fact, if it were his previous body, it would have been extremely difficult to deal with that many peak supreme masters alone. However, thanks to that huge bird that suddenly appeared, he was able to subdue the martial artists. This made Wei Mengqion even more terrified of Mok Jang-un. What the hell is this guy's true identity? He didn't know that Mok Jang-un could command not only humans but also monsters. How could such a monster exist within the Heaven and Earth Society without anyone knowing? It made him curious about Mok Jang-un's true identity. Meanwhile, Mok Jang-un disappeared in an instant using a tremendous light body technique and appeared behind Jang Nung-ae, grabbing his shoulder. You bastard. Shoo. Be quiet and relax your shoulders. If you keep moving like that, I might feel like breaking them with the strength in my hands. Tedder. In an instant, goosebumps covered Jang Nung-ae's entire body. The guy's snickering voice was filled with nothing but malice. He had experienced this feeling somewhere before. Eldest senior brother? Right. It was quite similar to his eldest senior brother, Na Yul-riang. The eerie feeling of lacking humanity was alike. Meanwhile, Ho Jong-hyuk grabbed the handle of his half-moon axe, Netherworld, with one of its blades broken and opened his mouth. Mok Jang-un. Stop it. Stop what? Did I do anything wrong? I don't know how you brought them in, but do you think you can handle all of this? That's not for you to worry about. Worry? Even if you immediately get what you want by threatening the Lord's life, do you think you can prevent all the forces supporting our Lord, including my own master, from finding out about this? Stop it now. No matter how strong your martial arts have become, this is a reckless act. With these words, Ho Jong-hyuk's fingers, cunningly pointing backwards, moved. He was sending hand signals. The recipient of those hand signals was none other than his female bodyguard behind him. Keep this with you. What is this? It's a rescue signal flare. A rescue signal flare. It's something my master gave me. You mean the Axe King? Yes. He gave it to me in case of an emergency. We probably won't need to use it, but just in case, I think it's better for you, the bodyguard, to keep it. Is it okay for me to have something like this? It's more effective for you to have it. If an urgent situation arises, the other members of the Five Mountains Alliance and I will be the targets of restraint anyway. It was a truly coincidental thing. He had entrusted the rescue signal flare to her in case of an emergency. The rescue signal flare was given by his master to deal with the eldest young master's side, but he thought it would never be used as long as the society leader was alive. However, he didn't expect things to unfold so quickly. Swish, swish. Ho Jong-hyuk sent hand signals with his fingers so that only the female bodyguard could see them. It was a prearranged signal. Gulp. Seo Hyein, the fourth mountain who was at an angle to see this signal, swallowed her saliva. She had heard about this from Ho Jong-hyuk, so she had left the female bodyguard in this spot in case of an emergency. Once the rescue signal flare goes off, Axe King Ho Taegang would immediately come here. Then even that bastard Mok Jang-un wouldn't be able to keep making rash threats. To make that happen, they needed to draw his attention even more. So Seo Hyein intervened. Mok Jang-un. Ho Jong-hyuk is right. A threat is only valuable when you can maintain it in the first place, so how do you plan to keep it up? At her words, Mok Jae-un's gaze naturally shifted to her. Seo Hyun cheered inwardly but didn't show it outwardly. She just hoped that Ho Jong-hyuk's female bodyguard would hurry and shoot the rescue signal flare. To do that, she tried to keep Mok Jae-un's attention by continuing to talk. However, crack. At that moment the sound of something breaking was heard. Did she use the rescue signal flare? Something was strange. If she had used the rescue signal flare, sparks should have shot upward because of the ammunition. But there was only the sound of something breaking. Unable to hide it any longer, Seo Hyun eventually couldn't resist and turned her head towards the female bodyguard. At that moment, no way. Seo Hyun couldn't hide her perplexity. That was because Ho Jong-hyuk's female bodyguard had broken the stick of the rescue signal flare. Has this woman gone crazy? If she understood Ho Jong-hyuk's hand signals, how could she do such a thing? That's when it happened. What's that? Mok Jae-un asked, looking at the female bodyguard. Then, it's a rescue signal flare that can request help from Axe King. This wench don't tell me. Seeing her answer so readily, Seo Hyun got angry and tried to rebuke her. But before that, Ho Jong-hyuk spoke first. Tyrin, were you also on that person's side? He had no choice but to suspect her from the moment she broke the rescue signal flare. At his question, the spirit possessing the female bodyguard Ha Chai-rin's body, Go Chan shuddered and said, "Ugh. This is fucking disgusting. Chai-rin. Enough. I'm done catering to your preferences." At Go Chan's resolute words, Ho Jong-hyuk's expression hardened. He had taken a liking to her due to her occasional blunt and somewhat different reactions and appearance compared to other women. So he had kept her close and tried to make her his woman, not just a bodyguard. But facing this result, he couldn't help but feel empty. Ho Jong-hyuk spoke in a voice full of lingering attachment. "Everything we've been through together was a lie." "Yeah, that's right. It was all a lie, so save that undeserved confidence for other wenches." Shocked by Go Chan's scolding pouring out like a flood, Ho Jong-hyuk just stood there dumbfounded. Seeing him like that, Go Chan snorted. If it weren't for being a servant spirit, he would have escaped from this bastard long ago. That guy must have a lot pent up. Indeed. At Go Chan's appearance, Mok Jae-un chuckled. He thought Go Chan had gotten quite used to it and was enjoying being a woman, but it seemed that wasn't the case either. Then Jang Nung-ak opened his mouth. "What the hell are you? What am I? When did you contact them?" It was utterly incomprehensible to him. Not only Jong-im Wai Meng-cheon's subordinate, but also that wench had no way to contact or connect with Mok Jae-un. But how the hell did he make them his people? No matter how much he thought about it, it was difficult to find a connection. But then Mok Jae-un asked, leaning close to his ear. "Do you have any more hidden trump cards?" At Mok Jae-un's question, Jang Nung-ak bit his lip hard. Right now there were no more moves that could turn the situation around. So Jang Nung-ak spoke in a vicious voice. "Even so, you won't gain anything. There's no point in being stubborn. Kill me." At his words, interest flashed in Mok Jae-un's eyes. He was curious about how Jang Nung-ak would react after his hidden moves were thwarted and he reached a dead end. Inwardly he thought Jang Nung-ak would submit. But unexpectedly he was coming on strong. "You're not the society leader's disciple for nothing, even if you're rotten. Shut up. You won't get anything anyway. Even if you threaten me with force, it will only be temporary." You're not stupid, so you should know. Your threat is meaningless unless this young master submits." "Well, that's true." At Mok Jae-un's ready acknowledgement, Jang Nung-ak frowned. He knew the guy wouldn't be unaware of that, so he couldn't understand why he was doing this. Anyway, there were no more moves left, so the only way to dissuade this bastard was to remind him of the consequences. However, "But you will submit to me. Like a tail-wagging dog. How dare you?" Crack. Arg. At that moment Jang Nung-ak screamed in pain as his bones broke. I clearly told you to relax your shoulders," Mok Jae-un said, raising the corners of his mouth wickedly. "Ugh. You bastard. Pai Lord." Seeing Jang Nung-ak in agony, Ho Jong-hyuk seemed to have come to his senses and shouted, aiming his half-bladed netherworld. "Stop right now. I think it's better for you to stop. If you don't want to see your lord suffering. You're really crossing the line. Didn't I cross the line long ago?" Mok Jiongun said with a smile. At his malice-filled appearance, Ho Jong Hyok was at a loss for words. What the hell was this bastard's real goal? If he provoked them like this, he would have an even harder time getting what he wanted, so why was he going this far? That's when he wondered. I suppose you don't have the will to submit on your own? You bastard. This young master will. I guess it's better to possess you than to control you. What? First go to sleep. Bam bam bam. At that moment Jang Nung AK, whose acupuncture points had been sealed, lost consciousness. But, how dare you? As soon as Jang Nung AK collapsed on the table, Ho Jong Hyok swung Netherworld towards Mok Jiongun's head with an angry rebuke. Whoosh. However, bam. The blade of Netherworld was caught by Mok Jiongun's hand. You have no learning ability. Crackle crackle. As black energy frosted over Mok Jiongun's hand, cracks formed even on the remaining blade. Ho Jong Hyok hurriedly tried to use his inner force to make him let go, but, swish. Mok Jiongun's figure had already penetrated right in front of him. Seeing Mok Jiongun's palm flying towards his chin, Ho Jong Hyok gritted his teeth. Damn it. He's really become a monster. Go Chan, who was possessing Ha Chai Rin's body, sincerely clicked his tongue. Ho Jong Hyok, the first mountain, and Seo Hyen, the fourth mountain, were lying on the floor unconscious, covered in blood. The two tried their best to resist, struggling and charging in, but the result was miserable. They ended up like that in just a few exchanges. Ho Jong Hyok, who had reached the pinnacle stage of Transcendent Realm, tried to turn the tide by unleashing his hidden ultimate technique, but it was useless. It only bought a little more time. How can a guy who hasn't cultivated martial arts for long become so strong so quickly? It was hard to believe. It felt so unfair that it made the world seem unjust. Then Mok Jiongun's voice was heard. You two come over here. You two? Ah. Go Chan looked at the man who was presumed to be possessed like himself. Was he called Zhang, the subordinate of the deceased Wai Mengqion? He had a faint feeling of spiritual power, so he thought he might be a possessing spirit, and his guess was correct. But when did he get possessed by this bastard? As he was wondering, the possessed Wai Mengqion climbed up to the pavilion, and Mok Jiongun said, You're seeing each other for the first time, right? At Mok Jiongun's words, Go Chan and Wai Mengqion looked at each other with strange gazes. It was close to asking, You too? With their eyes. Before introductions, shall we deal with this first? By this you mean? Then Mok Jiongun alternately pointed to Jang Nung-ik, the society leader's second disciple who had collapsed in front of him after having his acupuncture point sealed, and Ho Jong Hyok, the first mountain who had fainted covered in blood, and said, You need to possess these two, so which one of you wants to enter the second young master? As soon as he finished speaking, bam! Both Go Chan and Wai Mengqion raised their hands at the same time like lightning without exception. Chapter 183, Submission 2. Mok Jiongun raised an eyebrow, seeing Go Chan, who possessed Ha Chai Rin's body, and Wai Mengqion, who possessed Zhang body, raising their hands at the same time. Realizing that they both raised their hands, the two looked at each other. Both Go Chan and Wai Mengqion had unpleasant expressions. Mok Jiongun said to them, It seems you both want this body. At those words, Wai Mengqion hurriedly opened his mouth. I definitely want it. Please give me this body. Wait, that can't be. We may have skipped introductions, but there's a hierarchy even among water spirits. As a newcomer, how dare you covet this body? He had become a servant spirit before Mok Jiongun was brought to the Heaven and Earth Society. How dare a newbie servant spirit try to take the body before a senior even picks up their chopsticks? However, stay out of this, wench. Wai Mengqion snapped at Go Chan in a sharp voice. Seeing that, Go Chan was dumbfounded. What? Wench? Who are you calling a wench? I'm talking about you. Who else would I be talking about? Don't be greedy and be satisfied with that body, you by dash. Hey! Go Chan shouted angrily. Each day was already challenging and embarrassing for him as he possessed the body of a woman, Ha Chai Rin. And now this guy was provoking him? Do you think I want to be in this body? How dare you thoughtlessly call me a wench when you know nothing? Do you want to die? Who? Wench. Don't provoke me any further. Provoke? Are you blind? Fine. Let's do this, you bastard. Swish. A needle-like weapon appeared in Go Chan's fingers. He had fully adapted to this body after possessing Ha Chai-Ren's body for quite a long time. Now he was confident he could utilize more than 100% of this body's peak martial prowess. Like Go Chan, Wei Mengqion also half drew his sword. Although his martial prowess was much lower than his original body, he still had his original senses. He was at least confident he could subdue the wench in front of him. Then, take it easy you two. Mok Jaeungun's voice reached their ears. Unconsciously glancing at Mok Jaeungun, their expressions soon hardened. Although he was smiling, the immense energy flowing from Mok Jaeungun was pressuring them as if it would engulf them at any moment. At this, Go Chan and Wei Mengqion, who seemed like they would fight at any moment, soon withdrew their weapons. Even if they wanted to maintain their pride as servant spirits, they couldn't refuse their master's order. I was going to give you a choice, but I think it's better for me to decide. But, at those words, Wei Mengqion hurriedly knelt on one knee and clasped his hands together, pleading, "Master, please give me young Master Jang Nungake's body." He looked very desperate. So Mok Jaeungun asked in puzzlement, "You seem to want it badly. Is it because young Master Jang Nungake is a higher-ranking person?" At Mok Jaeungun's question, Wei Mengqion couldn't bring himself to reveal his true intentions. At a glance, it seemed like he wanted it because young Master Jang Nungake was of higher rank than Ho Jong Hyok, a member of the Five Mountains Alliance, as Mok Jaeungun said, but that didn't hold much meaning to him. He just wanted to protect his former lord even if it was in this way. However, if I reveal this, that monster-like person will probably hate it. That's why he couldn't say his true intentions. And he didn't want to see that wench possessing the body of his former lord. Then, "Master." Go Chan clung to Mok Jaeungun with teary eyes. "Didn't you promise? You said you'd move me to a suitable body if there was one." I did say that. I can't stay in this body any longer. So please give me that body." Seeing Go Chan holding onto his arm and pressing against his body while pleading, Wei Mengqion was dumbfounded and shouted, "Wench! How dare you act coquettishly?" "Coquettishly? What nonsense are you spouting now? Acting coquettishly isn't what you're doing right now acting coquettishly?" "What?" In an instant Go Chan realized what he was doing. Oh no. Perhaps because he had gotten too used to living as a woman, giving up on thinking rationally. He did something he wouldn't have done normally. Damn it. I got too immersed. Feeling embarrassed, his face flushed red. Seeing him like that, Chong Ryong, who was watching this inside the wooden puppet, burst out laughing. "Pohaha. This guy has completely become a wench." Mok Jaeungun chuckled and shook his head. It seemed that when a soul enters the body of the opposite sex, it gets considerably influenced even if one doesn't realize it. "It doesn't seem bad for you to stay in that body." At Mok Jaeungun's words, Go Chan lay flat on the floor and pleaded, "Oh no. That won't do, master. Didn't you promise? You said you'd move me to a man's body again." "A man? Don't tell me." Wei Mengqion frowned and looked at Go Chan. He wondered why this wench was trying to possess a man's body beyond her means, but was she saying she wasn't a woman but a man? Realizing this, Wei Mengqion looked at Go Chan as if looking at a bug. That was because he knew that even before becoming a spirit, Ho Jong Hyok kept that wench by his side as if she were his woman. "No, she said she's not a wench." So Wei Mengqion's gaze was close to contempt. Wei Mengqion pleaded with Mok Jaeungun again. "Master, if this person's goal is to simply enter a man's body, Ho Jong Hyok's body would be fine too, right? Then please give me young Master Jang Nungake's body." "No. I'm going to enter that body." "How dare a pervert like you?" "A pervert? Who are you calling a pervert?" "Master, please ignore this guy's words." Go Chan desperately defended himself. Go Chan wanted to possess young Master Jang Nungake's body no matter what. If that bastard takes Jang Nungake's body from him and he ends up in the body of a subordinate, then he would have to do whatever that bastard tells him to do. He had to prevent that at all cost. "Master, would you entrust young Master Jang Nungake's body, which is in a crucial position, to a pervert like this? I, who have watched young Master Jang Nungake closely for a long time, am more." Wei Mengqion also tried desperately to secure Jang Nungake's body no matter what. At the fervent arguments of these two, Mok Jaeungun showed an annoyed expression. Then Chong Ryong's voice rang in his head. "You're not good at everything either." "What? Well, you would have had to handle subordinates to be able to deal with this kind of situation. It seems you have something in mind. It's not just an idea, there are laws to handling subordinates. Laws? Yeah. What are they? Make the hierarchy clear. Hierarchy. Individually, they may obey your orders, but there needs to be a system in place for an organization to function. And in that system, there's something called a chain of command. Oh, you're indeed experienced. You must have handled many subordinates. Ahem. Mok Jae-young chuckled and opened his mouth. Why Mengcheon? Yes. Why Mengcheon, who had been passionately arguing to get Jang Nung-aek's body, stopped and replied. At his answer, Go Chan's eyes widened. Why Mengcheon? The second mountain Wisconsin Mengcheon. He had been curious about this guy's true identity. But he didn't expect him to be the deceased Wai Mengcheon. Then, he's really bold. It wasn't another disciple of the society leader who killed Wai Mengcheon, but Mok Jae-young. Go Chan, who had only been by Ho Jong-hyok's side, naturally assumed that Wai Mengcheon had been killed by either the eldest young master Na Yul-riang or the junior sister Wai So-yun, as they had guessed. But to think he died at Mok Jae-young's hands and became a servant spirit, it was surprising. Oh, this is making me uneasy. If it's Wai Mengcheon, he would know more about Jang Nung-ak and this Five Mountains alliance than anyone else. In that position, it seemed like Mok Jae-young would give Jang Nung-ak's body to Wai Mengcheon, not him. However, since Go Chan here is like my right-hand man, treat him as a superior. At Mok Jae-young's words, Go Chan looked at him in surprise. Even though Wai Mengcheon was dead, he could be considered a tremendous talent in the current situation. Wasn't he a master who had reached the pinnacle stage of transcendent realm when he was alive? Telling someone like that to treat him as a superior? And also, right-hand man. Gulp. Go Chan unconsciously swallowed his saliva. He had thought he was just a disposable card to this monster-like guy. But hearing him say this, it felt like his past hardships were being slightly rewarded. So Go Chan unknowingly puffed out his chest. He's become quite elated. Seeing Go Chan like that, Wai Mengcheon gritted his teeth. He was furious at the thought of treating someone like that whose gender was unclear as a superior. However, why aren't you answering? Do you perhaps want to be simply exterminated? And no way. How could that be? At Mok Jae-young's words, Wai Mengcheon was startled and waved his hands. Even if he rolled in a pile of dog shit, this world was better. Moreover, since he was already a spirit, if he were exterminated in this state, it would be no different from returning to nothingness. But I will treat him as a superior. Although he was resentful, Wai Mengcheon lowered his head as Mok Jae-young ordered. Seeing this, Go Chan couldn't hide his satisfaction, his lips twitching. To think that he, who retired as a low-ranking assassin despite being from the Flying Killing sect, would be treated as a superior by a future top master like Wai Mengcheon of the Heaven and Earth Society. Hee hee. Life was truly unpredictable. Sniff. Jang Nung-ae no, Go Chan, who was currently possessing Jang Nung-aek's body, couldn't help but feel moved beyond joy. Each day had been embarrassing and challenging for him to the point where he thought he might lose his gender identity as he possessed the body of a woman, Ha-chai-rin. But it was worth enduring that. Returning to a man's body made him feel confident. How's the body? Mok Jae-young asked him. At that question, Go Chan barely suppressed his excitement and said, It's really the best. It was difficult to describe in words. When he entered the body of Ha-chai-rin, a peak realm master, he who was merely second-rate expert, experienced sensations he had never felt before and was only satisfied with that aspect. But Jang Nung-aek's body was incomparable from the beginning. Amazing. How can such a body even exist? The body of Jang Nung-ak, who had reached the pinnacle stage of transcendent realm, could truly be called a monster. The internal energy Ha-chai-rin possessed was like a drop in the bucket. This body was really strong to the point where it felt like he could do anything if he wanted to. But, seeing Mok Jae-young, who had easily subdued this tremendous body, his master felt even more like a monster. Wasn't he someone who didn't even know the basics of martial arts just a month ago? He was truly a monster itself. Is the other body okay? This time Mok Jae-young asked Wai Mengcheon, who had entered Ho Jong-hyok's body. Wai Mengcheon nodded and replied, I think I can adapt quickly. Wai Mengcheon was also inwardly unable to hide his surprise. He was aware that the hidden First Mountain Ho Jong-hyok was strong, but after taking over his body, that strength was hard to compare to his former body. Even though they were both at the transcendent realm, the difference between the early stage and the pinnacle stage was truly stark. Ho Jong-hyuk. He's really amazing. If he wanted to, he could have taken the position of one of the 5 tigers at any time. With this body, he was curious about the outcome if he fought against that person who was undoubtedly the best among the 5 tigers. Fortunately, the bodies seem to suit you two to some extent. Indeed, the stronger the body, the more it tends to reject the spirit. So he had been worried, but fortunately, both Go Chan and Wai Mingqion seemed to have settled well into their bodies. Since they had taken over the bodies of young Master Jang Nung-ak, the leader of this force, and Ho Jong-hyuk, the hidden second in command, there would be no problem controlling this place. But are you really okay? Taking over that woman's body? It's fine. I don't really like that woman. Mok Jae-eun had intended to give Chong Ryong the body of Seo Hyein, the 4th mountain of the 5 Mountains Alliance. However, Chong Ryong refused. The reason was that she didn't really like the body. What could he do if she refused? Rather than that, how are you going to deal with that woman? At Chong Ryong's words, Mok Jae-eun's gaze naturally turned to Ha Chai-rin, who was lying unconscious. As Go Chan left her body, the successor of the flying killing sect assassins, her body became vacant. Mok Jae-eun stared at her intently. Although he had conveniently used her as Go Chan's vessel, he no longer needed her. There were many more useful cards within the Heaven and Earth Society. So Mok Jae-eun. Well, let's kill her then. He smiled and casually approached Ha Chai-rin to kill her. Then Go Chan, who had been satisfied with his new body, was startled and approached, saying, "Are you going to kill her?" "Yes. There's no immediate use for her, so wouldn't it be a waste to just kill her?" At Go Chan's words, Mok Jae-eun looked at him in puzzlement. Then he asked, "Why do you say it's a waste?" "Well, that's... Did you perhaps develop feelings for this body after being in it for a long time?" "No. How could that be?" Despite saying this, Go Chan felt strangely attached to her as if she were himself, perhaps because he had been in Ha Chai-rin's body for a long time and read all her memories. So although he strongly denied it, he felt uncomfortable about just killing her. It felt like killing himself in a way. Then is it okay to just kill her? Well, what you say is true, but still she's the successor of the Flying Killing Sect, a group of the 4 great assassins. Wouldn't it be a waste to just kill her? At his words, Mok Jae-eun stroked his chin. Even if she was the successor of the Flying Killing Sect, she wasn't a card he could immediately use, so was there a need to keep her alive? Then, after glancing at Go Chan, who was looking at him anxiously, he chuckled and said, "Can you make her submit so we can use her?" "I'll try. If it doesn't work, deal with her as you see fit." "All right." Just as Go Chan was about to reply, Ha Chai-rin, whose soul had settled normally after Go Chan's possessing spirit left her body, seemed to regain consciousness and opened her eyes. Gasp. Ha Chai-rin looked around with a startled face. Where am I? The surroundings were unfamiliar. She furrowed her brows. Her last memory was of dozens of blood-stained hands suddenly popping out from the ground, grabbing and pulling at her. She couldn't remember anything after that. What on earth happened? You seem to have woken up. At the familiar voice, Ha Chai-rin turned her head. You. The owner of the voice was none other than Mok Jae-eun. The moment she spotted him, the final sacrifice for the 100 days of killing to become the leader of the Flying Killing Sect, Ha Chai-rin instinctively shot the shadow needles hidden in her bracelet. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. However, her eyes widened. The flying shadow needles stopped mid-air. What the hell is going on? As she was perplexed, Mok Jae-eun lightly nodded his head. Clatter clatter clatter. All the shadow needles suspended in the air fell to the ground. Ha Chai-rin was so shocked by the sight that her pupils trembled like crazy. Just how profound was his internal energy that he blocked the needles she shot with his energy without even touching them? As if not caring about her bewilderment at all, Mok Jae-eun turned his head and said to Go Chan with a smile, "Can you make her submit?" "I'll try. If she can't be controlled, let me know. On second thought, it might be okay to use her as Gyu Soha's body instead." Chapter 184, Submission 3. Can you make her submit? "I'll try. If she can't be controlled, let me know. On second thought, it might be okay to use her as Gyu Soha's body instead." Gyu Soha. Who is that? At Mok Jaeongun's words, Go Chan, who possessed Jang Nung-ak's body, couldn't hide his puzzlement. Thinking carefully about what was said, it sounded like there were more spirits like them that could be used as vessels. As if confirming his guess, Mok Jaeongun agreed with a smile. That's right. There are more. Gyuso. She was a spirit that was raised with goo poison under the cliff of Corpse Blood Valley. She became a servant spirit by Mok Jaeongun and was now possessing Yang Mu-won, the caretaker of Corpse Blood Valley, guarding that place under orders. Originally, she was only at the green spirit level because the goo poison wasn't completed, but after receiving the leftover demonic energy from the usurping Sea King that Mok Jaeongun absorbed, her rank was finally elevated to a blue spirit. That guy who insists he's a man, and this bastard would make quite an interesting pair if they met. Indeed. Mok Jaeongun also agreed with Chong Ryong's words. No matter how you looked at her, Gyu So-ha, who appeared female and was being bullied by Chong Ryong, still insisted she was a man. We should bring her over soon. Gyu So-ha had become a spirit that could even face pinnacle stage Transcendent Realm Supreme Masters after her rank was elevated. Such an existence couldn't be left as a mere caretaker. Do you have someone to replace her? Chong Ryong asked in puzzlement. Most of the servant spirits except her had their own assigned roles. Demonic Monk was possessing Escort Bayok, a loyal subordinate of the Shadow Clan Master, to monitor him and gather information, so there was no servant spirit to replace him. The more loyal, determined, or vengeful someone is in life, the higher the probability of them being reborn as a spirit. What are you thinking? Coincidentally, I sense spiritual energy over there. The place Mok Jaeongun was looking at. It was the eastern direction of the garden where the martial artists from the terrace had withdrawn. The martial artists from the terrace who had withdrawn were killed by the demon beast Hume-won and Wai Ming-cheon. You're not thinking of... Yes. To Mok Jaeongun, whose curse power had become even more outstanding after eating the three-eyed eyeball, the newly born spiritual energy was clearly felt. A newly born spirit would at best not even reach the level of an earthbound spirit, so its will would gradually weaken and eventually perish. However, if we give it a little help, that will change. If it could at least reach the red spirit level to have a rank attached, it could possess someone. Mok Jaeongun was about to take a step. Then Go Chan, who possessed Jang Nung-e, asked, Master. Go Chan's eyes showed fear and a defensive stance at the same time, like a weasel with its fur standing on end as he pointed at Ha Chai-rin. To this, Mok Jaeongun replied in a nonchalant tone. Deal with her as you see fit. Now Ha Chai-rin was Go Chan's responsibility. Mok Jaeongun, who entrusted her to Go Chan, moved and headed towards the place where spiritual power was felt, passing the garden pavilion. There, the shrunken demon beast Hume-won was flying around, and on the floor were the cold corpses of the martial artists from the terrace. Among them, the existence that was born as a spirit was seen. Found it. The corners of Mok Jaeongun's mouth curved up. Go Chan approached the tense Ha Chai-rin. Then Ha Chai-rin, startled, aimed her shadow needles at Go Chan. Don't come any closer. Originally, as an assassin, she was trained to maintain composure in any situation, so she wasn't easily agitated by such things. But the situation was different now. She felt strangely disconnected from moving her body, as if she had been asleep for a long time and woke up, and she couldn't even understand what was happening. She was clearly aiming for Mok Jaeongun's life at Yun Mok Sword Manor, so what was going on? To her, Go Chan said, Hey. At Go Chan's call, Ha Chai-rin looked at Go Chan with tense eyes. Seeing that reaction, Go Chan inwardly felt a strange thrill. Until right before she died, she had considered him as a lowly inferior assassin. But now she was properly wary of him. It was truly ironic. After changing bodies, she looked infinitely weak to him. Of course, that was because the body of the society leader's second disciple, Jang Nung-ak, was that strong. The elated Go Chan warned her. You better behave. Damn it. Where the hell is this and who are you? At her rough way of speaking, Go Chan clicked his tongue. He had forgotten for a while, but she was indeed a woman with an extremely crude way of speaking. Her original personality hadn't gone anywhere. If you keep acting like that, your life will be in danger. That person has no mercy. That person? Are you talking about Mok Jaeongun? Yes. At Go Chan's words, Ha Chai-rin furrowed her brows. She was already extremely confused because of the existence called Mok Jaeongun. Mok Jaeongun was the final sacrifice for the 100 Days of Killing to be recognized as the leader of the Flying Killing sect. But she didn't know where things went wrong. The Mok Jaeongun she knew at Yun Moksword Manor was just a cowardly man without any skills. But when she closed her eyes and opened them again, his overwhelming presence and control over his energy were truly those of a supreme master and beyond. What the hell? What's going on? How did such a monster become the final sacrifice for the 100 Days of Killing? The 100 Days of Killing selected someone who wouldn't be a big problem even if they died. But wasn't he someone they couldn't kill? Go Chan, who was staring intently at the perplexed her, had the corners of his mouth twitching. Deal with her as you see fit. Mok Jaeongun had entrusted Ha Chai-rin to him. Therefore her life and death were now in his hands. Uncle, you killed the young master you served for Uncle Gam's revenge and committed suicide. Understood? FR from the beginning. Shoo. Be quiet. Be grateful that I'm letting you preserve your honor as a retired member of the Flying Killing sect. He vividly remembered when Ha Chai-rin had done that to him. She had treated him like complete trash. He had even died because of her. But the chance to pay her back with his own hands had unexpectedly come. The twitching corners of his mouth curved up wickedly. Soon Go Chan approached her. Then, swish. As soon as he got close, Ha Chai-rin shot her shadow needles at Go Chan. However, bam. The shadow needles didn't pierce Go Chan and were caught between his index and middle fingers. I can see it. I can see everything. Go Chan inwardly cheered. Even the notorious symbol of the Flying Killing sect assassins, the shadow needles, were useless against him now. He felt like he could catch them with his eyes closed just by the sound. Surprised by Go Chan's appearance, Ha Chai-rin said, Who the hell are you? Me? I didn't expect to see a retired person like this. Uncle Go Chan. Or should I call you former inferior assassin number 83? Suddenly what she had said came to mind. He wanted to rebuke her, saying, I'm inferior assassin number 83. But ever since possessing this body he had to faithfully play that role. Therefore, no, this young master is Jang Nung AK. Jang Nung AK? Jang Nung AK? Jang Nung you say? I've heard that name somewhere. Jang Nung. Jang. Suddenly Ha Chai-rin's eyes widened. That was because there was only one Jang Nung AK she knew. Jang Nung AK, the second disciple of the leader of the Heaven and Earth Society, one of the three great organizations currently dividing the martial world. Surprised, she was perplexed but soon denied reality. Toei. Jang Nung AK? How could that be? Why would the second disciple of the Heaven and Earth Society leader be at Yun Moksword Manor? Does this look like Yun Moksword Manor to you? What? This is the inner city of the Heaven and Earth Society and this young master's estate. At those words Ha Chai-rin's expression stiffened. Oh, does this make any sense? Just before she opened her eyes she was clearly at Yun Moksword Manor, so why was she in the Heaven and Earth Society? To the perplexed her, Go Chan said in a firm voice. Ha Chai-rin. She raised her head and looked at Go Chan. How did this person know her name? Did he hear it from that bastard Mok Jaeongun? As she was puzzled, Go Chan continued. Age 19. The only granddaughter of an assassin who retired at the physical age of 80 and a successor of the four great assassins group, the Flying Killing sect. Due to your impatient and hot-tempered personality that doesn't suit an assassin, you were forcibly confined in the Flying Killing cave, and after coming out in order to become the successor, you were in the midst of the 100 Days of Killing. But since you failed to kill Mok Jaeongun, your final target, it's hard to even consider you a successor now. Who are you? Ha Chai-rin's eyes trembled. That's how the human mind worked. You don't know much about the other person, but they know so much about you. The anxiety and fear that came from that were hard to describe. It felt like everything about her was being exposed. To her, Go Chan approached right in front of her and said in a low voice, From earlier hearing you is grating on my nerves. You're quite impudent for a mere successor of an assassin group. That's... At Go Chan's words, Ha Chai-rin was momentarily at a loss. If the other person was really Jang Nung AK, the second disciple of the Heaven and Earth Society leader, he wasn't someone she could treat carelessly. If the Heaven and Earth Society decided to, it would be a simple matter to wipe out the Flying Killing sect overnight. No matter how problematic her personality was, she knew that much. Young master. There seems to be some misunderstanding. I don't know why I'm here, but... Enough. Kneel. What? I said kneel. At Go Chan's words, Ha Chai-rin hesitated for a moment. Even if he was the second disciple of the Heaven and Earth Society leader, wasn't this too much for a first meeting? What did she do to deserve this? Flap. At that moment, Ha Chai-rin's head turned to the side. Her cheek burned. Go Chan, who had slapped her, said with a sneer, "Kneel." Normally, she would have submitted by now, but she had such stubbornness and temperament that even the calm assassins would be dumbfounded. Ha Chai-rin bit her lip hard and said, "Young master, I don't know what you heard from that Mok Jaeyoung, but this is..." Flap. Ack. Ha Chai-rin's cheek turned the other way. The force put into it this time was incomparable to before. Because internal energy was infused, blood flowed from her mouth that was torn on the inside. Her eyes were bloodshot. This is going too far. Impudent wench. Who are you carelessly slandering? That person is someone I serve. What? At Go Chan's words, Ha Chai-rin couldn't hide her perplexity. What kind of nonsense was coming out of the mouth of a big shot like the second disciple of the Heaven and Earth Society leader? Saying he serves him? She had guessed they had some kind of relationship, but this was quite shocking. Why was a disciple of the Heaven and Earth Society leader saying he served the son of an orthodox martial family? It was utterly incomprehensible. Then, bam. Go Chan slapped her cheek again. The force put into it this time was stronger than before, so her head turned even more. And a bruise even formed on her face. You. Bam. Before she could speak, Go Chan slapped the other cheek. Ha Chai-rin's head turned the other way. Ha. Ha. Drip drip. Plop. Plop. Blood flowed from her mouth as her head shook, dripping onto the floor. It was painful and dizzying as the internal energy got stronger each time he hit her. As Go Chan raised his hand again like that. Before that, Ha Chai-rin's knees hit the floor. Even though she was the successor of an assassin group and revered as a peak realm master, she couldn't help but be powerless in this moment. To her, who had finally knelt, Go Chan tapped her forehead with his finger and said, "Yes. This is the eye level between you and me." Clench. Her eyes, biting her lips tightly, welled up with tears. She had never felt such humiliation before. Moreover, the reality that she couldn't even resist made her feel even more miserable. Seeing her suffering, Go Chan sneered and was delighted. Hee hee. This was just the beginning. He was so excited that he couldn't bear the thought of making her submit to the bottom. Watching Go Chan, who was enjoying himself with a face full of madness, Wei Mengqion, who possessed Ho Jong Hyok's body, inwardly clicked his tongue. Is that why he let her live? He thought he was just a pervert, but he was extremely vicious beyond expectation. The estate of Wei So-yun, the junior sister of the Heaven and Earth Society leader. The atmosphere in the main hall's meeting room was somewhat subdued. That was because they, who had fainted and woken up after a long time, were too ashamed to face their lord, Wei So-yun. All of her loyal subordinates were beaten by a single person. This was a major incident that no one had expected. When everyone was keeping their mouths shut, a man stood up from his seat and soon knelt on the floor. That Grand Leader Wu? Senior Brother Wu. At his attitude, Yang Il, the young leader of Transient Sword Group, and Gio Karayan, the eldest daughter of Sun Rock Valley Master, called out to him as if trying to dissuade him, perplexed. Nevertheless, Wu Horang lowered his head and apologized. "I'm sorry. Everything happened because of me." Wu Horang, who had come to his senses, thought all of this was his fault. It seemed to have happened because he couldn't control his feelings of love and challenged Mok Jaeyoung to a duel. Who would have thought he would do this? He thought it would just end as a matter between the two of them. But he never predicted that Mok Jaeyoung would enter the estate of Wei So-yun, the society leader's junior sister, and beat up all her loyal subordinates. Grit. Mok Jaeyoung. Thinking of that bastard made his teeth chatter. However, he thought he had to take responsibility for what happened because of him right now. Swish. Wu Horang took out a dagger from his bosom and placed it in front of him. Then, holding out his left hand, he said, "I have damaged the young lady's reputation, so I will first pay with my left hand." Big brother. No. Grand leader. The other loyal subordinates tried to stop him. However, as if trying to carry out his will, Wu Horang drew the dagger and tried to cut his left wrist. Right at that moment, clang, before it could touch his wrist, Wu Horang's dagger was deflected and stuck into the wall. Along with that, an ornamental bead fell right in front of Wu Horang. Wu Horang raised his head and looked in the direction the ornamental bead had flown from. Young lady. The one who threw it was none other than Wai Soyun. Wai Soyun looked at Wu Horang with a cold gaze and said, I won't forgive taking responsibility in this way. But enough. At Wai Soyun's small rebuke, Wu Horang shut his mouth. Perhaps feeling her anger, the other loyal subordinates also quietly closed their mouths. This was the first time they had seen her get angry like this. Naturally, they couldn't help but be cautious. Then Wai Soyun opened her mouth. I realized how poorly I managed the hierarchy through this incident. No. How could the young lady? Shut up. Gyeokiryan shut her mouth in surprise. Usually, she treated them well in front of everyone to boost the morale of her subordinates. But this was the first time they saw her being so resolute. Now that I've realized an organization without a hierarchy has no future, I will fix the system from now on. Understand? No answer. Swoosh. As soon as she finished speaking, a cold energy flowed out from Wai Soyun. The energy was so cold that in an instant, the entire room was filled with a chill and steam flowed out of everyone's mouths. At this, Yang Il, the young leader of Transient Sword Group, knelt on one knee, clasped his hands together and shouted, We will keep that in mind. Then the others took the same posture and chanted, We will keep that in mind. Humph. Looking down at them like that, Wai Soyun snorted and withdrew her energy. As she withdrew her energy, Wu Horang looked at her with somewhat surprised eyes. To freely control Yin energy to this extent? What? He knew she had a special constitution and possessed vast true energy. But her energy had become much more stable and stronger than before. Could it be that she had gained some enlightenment in the meantime? Looking closely, her face was also glowing and seemed much more beautiful than before. As he was puzzled, Wai Soyun said, And I declare two things here. No one can object to this decision. We will keep that in mind. Everyone answered simultaneously at her words. It was definitely effective to draw a clear line properly. As he said, it seemed she had been too lenient and spoiled her subordinates, not properly fulfilling her role as their lord. Through this incident, she firmly resolved to change. Wai Soyun, who had hardened her heart, opened her mouth. The first is about Mok Jaeongun. Ah. At her words, everyone's eyes lit up at the same time. They already thought Mok Jaeongun was the root of all this happening. Naturally, they thought she wouldn't just let this incident pass. That bastard was now no different from an enemy to Wai Soyun's faction. I'll pay him back. Wu Horang inwardly waited for her order. If she just gave the order, he was prepared to challenge Mok Jaeongun again at any time. However, from now on, treat Mok Jaeongun the same way you treat me. At the unexpected order that came out of Wai Soyun's mouth, everyone looked at her with surprised expressions.